Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we plunge into a stack of articles, research, and expert notes to really pull out those important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Think of it as your express lane to being genuinely well-informed with, surprising facts and just enough wit to keep things interesting. Today, we're dissecting the dynamic and often kind of perplexing world of technology. We've got sources covering, everything from the surprising strength of the tech market to the geopolitical currents shaping things, the huge rise of generative AI, and even a look at future wearables, our mission. To cut through the noise, help you understand what truly matters, and maybe uncover some of those aha moments. Ready to get into it? Let's unpack this. Okay, let's kick things off with the macro view. The tech market itself. Our sources show the NASDAQ 100 hitting consecutive record highs near the end of Q2. It's been an intense year, but clearly something's driving this positive momentum. So what's the driving force here? What's the secret sauce?
Well, what's really fascinating here is that the single sort of undisputed catalyst seems to be the strength in corporate profits, especially within tech.
Okay, profits.
Yeah, we're hitting all-time highs, but it's important to note it's mostly the largest companies driving this. Only about 6% of the S&P 500 were hitting new highs as of last Friday.
Only 6%.
Right. So the aha here is it's not broad-based yet. It's more like a few titans pulling the market up. But the overall message is, yeah, we remain in a bull market.
A bull market, but kind of a concentrated one. That's interesting. But looking beyond just the profits, our sources also mentioned this shifting global landscape. Is the U.S. still, setting the pace for global tech earnings? Or is that changing?
Yeah, if you zoom out a bit, the growth advantage the U.S. has historically had, it's definitely narrowing. Think about it. The U.S. is kind of decelerating from a really strong start, while Europe is actually accelerating, coming out of stagnation. And what's more, global tech earnings are increasingly flowing towards Asia and Europe. So that's led to a narrowing of the valuation gap, though, the gap is still pretty large. If the U.S. dollar stabilizes in the second half, maybe U.S. tech comes back into favor more strongly, but that rebalancing is definitely a trend to watch.
And beyond earnings, trade and tariffs are huge factors now, right?
Right.
Especially geopolitically. How do Americans feel about those, particularly regarding China?
It's interesting. The research from the Reagan Institute shows Americans are, broadly speaking, supportive of tariffs on China.
Okay.
But, and this is a big but, that support flips pretty quickly when it means higher prices for consumers here.
Right, the wallet impact.
Exactly. And their number one concern about China, it's technology theft, closely followed by anxiety about China's AI advancements. The fear they might get ahead of the U.S. in AI research and leadership.
That's a very clear message.
Yeah.
So for businesses and policymakers trying to navigate this, what's the key takeaway when we talk about tariffs? Is there a distinction to be made?
That's a crucial point. Not all tariffs are created equal, right? Tariffs on China are often framed as part of, let's call it strategic decoupling for national security, untangling critical supply chains.
Makes sense.
However, applying sustained long-term tariffs against our allies and friends, that would actually hurt the American tech sector. It could impact our ability to modernize the military, develop new capabilities, really because of supply chain problems.
So it's about being strategic, not just broad.
Precisely. Strategic tariffs against rivals might serve national security, but broad tariffs against everyone else can backfire and weaken us.
And speaking of national security, our sources point to one major bipartisan concern that seems to rise above even the China relationship. What's that?
Yeah, that's right. When you ask Americans about geopolitical issues more broadly, one thing really stands out: preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Oh.
It's a top concern. Forget this. 84% of Americans. A truly bipartisan consensus.
Wow, 84%.
Yeah, it just underscores this critical need for ongoing innovation in defense technology.
Okay, moving from those big geopolitical currents, let's dive into some specific policy shifts hitting tech, particularly around the workforce. There's a recent Supreme Court ruling impacting H-1B visa holders. Those are the specialized work visas tech relies on, and their families. And this sounds like it gets complicated fast.
It really is fascinating. The Supreme Court essentially ruled that federal district judges can't issue nationwide injunctions anymore, at least not in the same way. And this directly affects challenges to President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. That's set to go back into effect July 27th.
Okay, so no more sweeping countrywide orders stopping something. What does that practically mean for, say, an H-1B visa holder worried about this?
Well, it points towards what you could call piecemeal enforcement, a real patchwork.
Patchwork. How so?
It means if an H-1B holder wants to protect their baby from the order's effects, they might need to sue individually. Or maybe join a class action lawsuit. Or, alternatively, hope they live in a state that successfully gets its own injunction.
Right, so different rules in different places.
Exactly. You'll have differing legal standards across the country. Think about the headache for tech companies trying to manage this.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like Amazon, Infosys, Google,
Mhm.
companies that hire a lot of H-1B workers. What are the bigger implications for them, for U.S. tech competitiveness?
Well, a crucial implication is that U.S. tech absolutely relies on attracting, the best and the brightest from around the world. That's key to staying competitive.
Sure.
So if there's even a perception of instability in the U.S. immigration system, if potential hires worry about inconsistent protection for their families, that could definitely factor into whether they accept a job offer here versus, say, in Canada or Europe.
Right, it becomes a talent recruitment and retention issue.
Absolutely. Companies will face new questions. Should they change relocation plans, offer special accommodations for employees worried about their child's citizenship? It adds a whole new layer of complexity.
Okay, so shifting from immigration complexities to, well, another complex figure, Elon Musk. He's been very vocal recently about a new tax bill kind of railing against it, which seems like a shift because historically he wasn't exactly pro-subsidy for EVs, right? What's the backstory?
Yeah, historically, Musk's line was pretty much that Tesla didn't need subsidies. He talked about wanting a level playing field.
Which made sense when Tesla was dominant.
Exactly, when they are clearly the most profitable EV company. But Tesla's financial picture has changed quite a bit over the last year. They've had sales challenges, particularly in China and Europe, and frankly, other EV makers are just getting more competitive.
So more pressure on the bottom line.
Definitely. That puts pressure on the company's finances.
Okay, so connect that to his current opposition to this bill, the one that would sunset those consumer tax credits faster, potentially adding, what, $7,500 to the price of an EV?
Right. Well, Musk does consistently talk about the deficit and debt. That's true.
Yeah.
But his current opposition seems very much tied to the direct hit on Tesla's bottom line. The bill possibly ending those credits in 90 days instead of 180. That could really challenge a company already, dealing with some demand issues.
Especially with other controversies maybe impacting sales, too.
Potentially, yeah. Things like his political stances. This tax credit change just adds another financial headwind at a tricky time for Tesla.
All right, let's shift gears again. Let's talk about something absolutely transforming the digital world, generative AI. Our sources are saying it's really moving past the early adopters now, becoming truly mainstream. What's the latest on that adoption curve?
It's actually pretty striking. Over a third of the U.S. population is already using generative AI in some conscious way.
Over a third already, wow.
Yeah. And while millennials were the first wave, Gen Z is ramping up incredibly fast. Our projections show that by 2025, we'll probably see about the same number of Gen Z and millennials using these tools. And Gen Alpha is starting too.
So the younger generations are really diving in.
Oh, absolutely. By the end of our forecast, looking out to 2029, we expect a clear majority of everyone will be using Gen AI tools. And for younger internet users, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, it'll be over 3/4. It's a really rapid ascent.
That's just a massive surge. So
Yeah.
which specific tools are people using most, and what are they using them for?
Well, ChatGPT is still the dominant player. About 3/4 of Gen AI users are on it.
Still the king there.
Now, yeah. Though its share is actually decreasing a bit because of competition, mainly from Google's Gemini and Microsoft Copilot. They're catching up.
And the use cases, what are people doing with it?
The number one use case for about 64% of users is search, basically augmenting or replacing traditional search. And that's projected to go up to maybe 75%.
Interesting. Beyond search.
Work-related stuff is big too. Coding help, general productivity tools, that's also in the 64% to 74% range. Then you have text and image generation, used by maybe 20 to 40%. And personal recommendations, like for shopping, that's around 40%.
What I find interesting about your research is how granular it is. But it makes me wonder, are lots of people using Gen AI without even knowing it?
You're absolutely right. That's a great point. Our numbers, the ones I just mentioned, only count people who consciously use a specific Gen AI tool like ChatGPT or Gemini.
Okay.
But if you're just using Google search and you get those AI overviews popping up, or you interact with a shopping chatbot or customer service, you're touching generative AI in the background, and those interactions aren't even included in our conscious usage figures. So yeah, it's truly pervasive, often invisible.
That really underscores its reach. So this raises a question. With social media platforms like Meta AI and X using Grok, integrating AI, how important is their access to all that user data, all that conversational data?
Oh, it's a massive advantage. A huge one.
Why specifically?
Because that conversational data from billions of interactions is incredibly valuable for training these AI models. Not just for understanding language nuances, but also for spotting trends, understanding what people care about, what they're talking about.
Right, real-time insights.
Exactly. Google has a similar edge with all its search data, obviously. This constant stream of real-world data is absolutely critical for improving their AI services and staying competitive.
Okay, so from AI software, let's jump to hardware. There's buzz about Apple maybe building a smart ring.
Yeah.
But they're so invested in the Apple Watch, right? Why would they pursue a ring? Doesn't that seem a bit redundant?
It's a fair question because Apple is absolutely all in on the watch. You know, big color display, tons of accessories, the whole app marketplace. It's a huge revenue stream.
Yeah.
A ring would be totally different. No screen, no apps like the watch, probably cheaper, lower margin.
So why bother?
Well, a few reasons. It could definitely freshen up their wearables lineup, offer a less bulky alternative to the watch. Some people find the watch cumbersome, especially for sleep tracking.
True, wearing a watch 24/7 isn't for everyone.
Right. A ring could be more comfortable for that and easier to pair with any outfit, you know. It just broadens the appeal of their wellness tech.
Okay, so if they do jump into the ring market, what's Apple's potential edge? They're known for miniaturization and that ecosystem lock-in.
Exactly. Those are their big strengths. Their expertise in miniaturization and manufacturing suggests they could probably pack more sophisticated health sensors into a ring than smaller players like Aura or maybe even Samsung.
More sensors, got it.
And then there's the ecosystem. Imagine integrating things only Apple can easily do. Using the ring as a key for your door or car, making Apple Pay payments, maybe even having a tiny Siri microphone built in.
Connected to everything else.
Precisely. Syncing seamlessly with your iPhone, your watch, your AirPods, maybe even future AR glasses. It fits really well into their whole connected device strategy. So, yeah, it feels like a matter of when, not if, they enter that market.
Okay, finally, let's wrap things up with maybe one of the most high-stakes tech stories right now.
Yeah.
The whole TikTok saga. The potential forced sale in the U.S. What's the latest development there?
Well, the big news recently is President Trump announcing that a buyer for TikTok's U.S. operations has actually been identified.
A buyer identified?
Okay, and it's a huge but. The big unknown is what China does now. Remember, ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, is based in Beijing, and they oversee tech the Chinese government considers sensitive. So ultimately, Beijing gets the final say. They have to approve any sale.
Right. And I remember previous attempts to sell TikTok kind of stumbled, especially over the algorithm, didn't they? Is that still the main sticking point?
That's exactly right. Our reporting back in April suggested previous deal attempts would have left that crucial algorithm in China's control.
Which wasn't going to fly here.
No, especially with trade tensions rising between Washington and Beijing, it just became politically impossible. So the current group of buyers, Oracle, is in there, who already does back-end work for TikTok US via Project Texas.
Right, the data security project.
Yeah. And Andreessen Horowitz, Blackstone. Their plan is apparently to dilute ByteDance's stake below the threshold in that 2024 law and, crucially, get the algorithm included in the sale.
So the algorithm is key.
Absolutely. If that algorithm isn't fully transferred from Chinese control, that could absolutely become the major roadblock in Washington. It could lead to Congress objecting, maybe even triggering a shutdown.
And haven't we seen extensions on this deadline before? It feels like this has been pushed back already.
Oh, yes. It's not the first time. The president just signed another extension, pushing the deadline into September. It was originally June 19th.
Okay.
But here's the thing. This is already his third extension, and the law technically only allows for one.
Ugh. So legally questionable.
Well, it's certainly unclear how much further it can be pushed legally. It just adds another layer of uncertainty to a really complex situation.
Wow, what a deep dive that was into this complex, definitely exciting, sometimes really perplexing world where tech meets policy meets geopolitics. We've touched on everything from those market highs driven by just a few big companies to the complex dance of global trade, the really pervasive reach of AI, and even future tech potentially fitting on our fingers.
And if you try and connect all those dots, right, it's just so clear that technology isn't really just about the newest gadget or the latest software update anymore. It's deeply, deeply interwoven with national security, global economics, how talent moves around the world, even fundamental questions about things like citizenship and basic liberties. The lines are just incredibly blurry now.
So What does this all mean for you listening in as you navigate this fast-changing tech world? Maybe the biggest takeaway is just how interconnected all these seemingly separate issues really are. Supreme Court ruling on immigration can ripple out to affect a tech company's global standing. A tariff decision can impact defense capabilities down the line. It's all linked.
Which I think raises a really important question for all of us, doesn't it? In a world where tech innovation is so tightly bound to geopolitical power, and where policy choices can hit our digital lives so directly, how do we make sure that progress actually serves a broad societal good while still protecting individual freedoms and, national interests? It's definitely something to chew on as we move forward.